Rest in peace, my last three brain cells, or as you were known by your friends and family, the brainy boys, or the boys who are brains, or the brainy guys, or the guy brains, and so on. You have served me well. I remember a time when I still had many brain cells that worked together in unison to hand things in on time by doing the work when it was given instead of at the last minute. Sadly, today, I've come to speak about the unfortunate passing of my good friends to make sure that they are acknowledged and remembered as they lived, not as they died. Today is a day of celebration, not mourning, as today we say goodbye to some gracious buddies that may no longer exist in any physical or spiritual form, but instead in the memories in our minds of all the work they managed to produce. One piece of their grand doing that I remember quite fondly is a piece called For Firefighters. It goes as such: Fire, firefighters, firefighters fighting, firefighters fighting fire, firefighters focusing on fighting fire, lots of firefighters focusing on fighting fire. Friends of firefighter formed to fight the fire. The firefighters flocked to fight the frightful fire. The 50 firefighters and firefighter friends finished fighting the ferocious fire. Finally, like five fluorescent flamingos, the firefighters fly away from their final firefight. Bit of a tongue twister, that one. This poem is not only a great example of the outstanding level of skill the Brainy Boys contributed to each and every item they wrote, but it's also an insight into the depth and of their thoughts and feelings. The Brainy Boys didn't merely write a poem full of exquisite alliteration and rhythm, but they also expressed their thankfulness to the firefighting community in a clear yet thoughtful manner. The Brainy Boys lived quite a humble and ordinary life, just like the rest of my brain cells. Work wasn't too difficult, as they came to be while I was still in intermediate school. It was only at the beginning of year 11 of high school that a true challenge arrived: NCEA Level 1. And by the beginning of NCEA, NCEA Level 1, it was far too much for their brain cell brethren who jumped ship as soon as they could. But the Briny Boys, like a coin that gets dropped into wet concrete and isn't removed before it dries, stayed put. I commend them for that. They stuck around longer than anyone else ever dared to, which is a trait they carried with them throughout their many works. They was persistent as an assistant called Percy, whose name, without his liking, was often shortened to Persistent. The boys were always thinking and churning out ideas like a meat grinder that churns out meat, taking in the world and creating something new, whether it was needed or not. Due to the absence of any other brain inhabiting beings, the brainy boys controlled all of my daily tasks: walking, talking, gawking, and skulking. With that much duty and work resting on their figurative literal shoulders, you'd expect that they'd be completely swamped, but on the contrary, they were fit as a fiddle and smart as a dart. Yet another show of their great merit. One story that I've just remembered was when I had to hand in an assessment that was due that very day. I hadn't written anything. That's when the full attention capacity of the Brainy Boys kicked in, writing over 2,000 sensical words in under an hour. They didn't always do everything conventionally, but when they were interested, they were interested. I ended up getting a high merit, which really just shows those hard-working tryhards that procrastination isn't a flaw, but a skill. It's fun to remember them as they were in their youth, but as all things do, they got old. Even in their senior life, the Brandy Boys were exuberant, though maybe a bit slower and easier to distract. But that didn't matter, because at this point in their lives, they had already written countless stories, poems, and songs that confirmed their legacy as three of the greatest cells in anyone's head. Now we get to the sad part, the passing of the Brady boys. Those three boys lived for a good 6.5 years, spreading all the good and bad thoughts they ever conceived to anyone whom they trusted. But on the 31st of May 2021, coincidentally being the day the plan for this eulogy was posted, the Brainy Boys had an aneurysm that put them out of commission for the rest of eternity. I didn't know how I was going to live without them at first, but now I know that they're still with me. I still remember them. I don't know how I will survive without them, as they have made me who I am today. But at least I can finally rest peacefully, knowing that my boys will not only be remembered as a threesome of Galen goofballs, though that was an accurate description of them during their earliest years. Instead, as some of the hardest working microscopic beings this world has ever had the pleasure of experiencing. Rest in peace, you beautiful bastards. Rest in peace.